fire that we were assisting with, the Cedar Fire, while there weren't any homes lost, you could just tell that the anxiety levels were really high with the people that we were sheltering. And I didn't quite understand that at first until we took a trip to a neighborhood that had experienced a similar fire just 2 months prior that these same community had experienced, and there was about 200 homes lost. You could understand why the anxiety levels were so high. And so it was so nice that when we ended up closing the shelter and everyone was able to go back home, I was able to assist one woman back into her home, and just the sigh of relief when she walked in and was able to sit down on her own couch was really rewarding for me.
I think one of my most memorable things was coming up, going through neighborhoods, and this one couple stood out to me mostly. Was a couple that were probably 75 to 80 years old, just had themselves, no one else. Their home was totally destroyed. You could look in one window and out the back and see nothing but studs from the walls. There's nothing else there. And they were there every day. We would come and deliver food, and they were so thankful. And what they were doing was continuing to live and do what they had to do to survive. And the fortitude from them, I think, rubbed off on a lot of us and gave us the strength to keep going, and the happiness that what we're doing really does make a difference.
I was actually working in a shelter in Baker, which is about 30 minutes north of Baton Rouge. And one of the most memorable moments for me during our deployment was I got to speak with a family that had actually moved to Baker because they had been displaced originally by Hurricane Katrina. So they were just starting to really get back on their feet, and this huge flooding happened. One of the things that I was really touched by was how this family was so loyal to Baker, because Baker had really welcomed them in after Hurricane Katrina, so they really did not want to move outside city limits because this is where they had found their family. And it was just a really touching moment to see how everyone kind of rallied around each other back then and back during this recent round of flooding.
In August, I was asked to deploy to Oshawa, Canada. And not only was this my first deployment, but it was the first time that the Red Cross had partnered with OnStar. It was quite intense because it was 3 floors of hundreds of call agents taking calls, and they took calls from folks in Louisiana. There was one episode where a supervisor came and got me because the call agent, a young lady, was taking a call from a dad in Louisiana, and he turned down a street, and immediately water started rushing on the street, and he was stuck in the water with his 3 children in the car. At the same time that she was trying to calm him down, she was calling 911 in Louisiana and giving them the information and the coordinates. And it seemed like forever, but it was a matter of minutes. The fire department came, they rescued the 3 children and the dad, and the call ended.
So one of the stories that's probably my mission moment from the deployment was I received a call from the disaster mental health lead about a woman and her son who were living in their car and had a dog with 10 puppies, and they weren't able to feed the dogs, and they were really concerned about that. So it was my job then to work with partners to try to find a solution. So thankfully we have a great relationship with our state partners in Louisiana, and utilizing resources that they had in their warehouse, their donation warehouse, we were able to get 50 pounds of dog food out to the woman, as well as some cleaning supplies and food for the family to help them in their recovery process as well.
I had the opportunity to meet with quite a few people who were taking the next step in the recovery process, who had been living in Red Cross shelters for weeks at a time, and who were finally putting the pieces back together to be able to move into new apartments or stay in a hotel rather than on a cot until the repairs to their home were finally finished. And there was one woman in particular who actually was able to move out of the shelter and into a hotel temporarily while she waited for the final repairs on her home to be completed. And I got to spend quite a bit of time with her, hear her story, and hear how The experience that she had being helped by the Red Cross made her want to become a Red Cross volunteer.
You know, I'm still trying to come up out of, that I'm not in a shelter anymore, that I'm really moving ahead.
Now, they told me that you were like one of the most helpful people in the shelter. What was it like just living there?
Well, the first, we was in stage 6. I just started helping out the handicapped, bathing them, making up beds for them, getting up at 5:15, making coffee for everybody. I really started smiling again because I really had something to do. It was so awesome. So when the peoples came that washed clothes, it was 2 older couples, so I just chipped in and he washed, she separated, and I fold.
So, you mentioned that you want to join up with the Red Cross now.
Yes, I do.
Why?
Why? Because I like helping. I love helping peoples. I mean, it's the joy. It's the joy. It's just Red Cross just been so good to me from day one. And that's why I would love to join. I would just love to join their group, to go out to help others. Thank you, Red Cross. Thank you for let me join y'all family.
The key takeaway for me was, other than having the privilege and the honor of serving the people of Baton Rouge, was the pluck and reserve and the resiliency of the people that we met. There were people who were very memorable. There was this one man who I'll never forget. He was a Chinese gentleman, and he had a wife who didn't speak much English. And he finally he was somebody that was in his home, but it was so damaged that he had to eventually leave. But on the last day, he came up to me and he said to me, "You were the difference between me and nothing." And he says, "I thank you very, very much." And what he did was the most profound thing that I ever saw. He did one of these, and he bowed to me like I was an emperor. It was a symbol of reverence and love and thanks that I will keep with me in my heart forever.
So this couple lived in a neighborhood in Rosenberg, Texas, and not far from there we had been doing some bulk distribution in an area. And after we had visited this area, one of our clients posted this on Facebook. "Dear Red Cross, these past couple of days have been the toughest but the most wonderful days. After losing most of our belongings, we were blessed with the most amazing people. They have been up and down trying to fit our every need. We have no way of repaying every single one of you, but we keep you in our prayers and in our hearts. Thank you for everything you have done for us. The Lord didn't send us angels with wings. He sent them with a red cross and a red vest.